This is me at the chemo center with Aaron. Aaron, you want to say hi?
Hi.
We've just started my chemo.
In the winter of 2020, Mom was back in chemo. My brother had come to Halifax to help out.
It takes about 3 hours to finish this whole round for the day.
Then, in March of that year, of course, the pandemic hit. Suddenly, everyone was wearing a mask. Chemo was still going ahead, but she needed a negative COVID test first. After the pandemic hit, no one was allowed inside the chemo room with patients. Mom told me the chemo room had a different atmosphere now, as patients with masks sat quietly with their machines. Everyone was immunocompromised, fearful about this virus sweeping through our hospitals and homes. Cancer, set against a backdrop of COVID. Mom went through that course of chemotherapy alone and told me she badly missed the support of having her family there. In 2020, Mom would end up back in the emergency room, facing something that almost took her life. But this time, it wasn't cancer or COVID. This is Overlooked, a podcast about ovarian cancer, and you're listening to the voice of my mom, Teresa.
It is the 6th of June, again in COVID isolation, so I'm alone here at the chemo center and they don't let you bring anybody else. So don't know how long that the COVID will last, but I know that hopefully I don't have to come back to the chemo center again for a chemo. It's been a long journey. Gotten through it, got strength from my family and friends, and my dear children and husband and grandchildren have been very, very supportive as well. So that makes the journey so much better and easier going through the chemo. You know, you're doing it for them because they're cheering you on and they want to see you better, and also for myself. But I only get my strength from God. So that's been a good thing. It's good to have faith. It's good to be, know that there's someone watching out for you. That's what it's been like, this journey with cancer.
This time around, the doctor suggested a relatively new drug as treatment. It was called niraparib.
My blood tests have been okay so far, and I'm going to now start on the niraparib, which is the maintenance drug. So hopefully no more chemo for anything else and stays that way.
Niraparib, or Zejula, another name for this drug. Look, I don't know why they have these dumb names for drugs. I can just about spit it out of my mouth, but that's what it's called. This was a much more targeted cancer drug than the chemotherapy drugs Mom had taken. It was given FDA approval in 2017, so it was not even 10 years old, which makes it a pretty new drug. And the decision to take it was a really big deal. There was a long list of side effects. We talked about it as a family, and Mom and Dad together weighed the risks. But if there was a chance that this could keep the cancer from recurring, Mom decided that she would take it.
So I started niraparib last night. I've been taking it in the night, 300 mg. I hope to continue taking it and hope that the cancer cells don't regenerate or revive.
Remember that Mom is a high school science teacher.
Now, from what I understand, the niraparib is a protein inhibitor, and the protein that it inhibits is called PARP. This protein encourages the damaged cancer cells to repair themselves. So what Zejula does is it prohibits the protein from probably reaching the cancer cells, or it just destroys the protein. I'm not sure. So that way, that once that's done and without that protein to help repair, the cancer cells would stay damaged or would ultimately, hopefully, extinguish themselves and die off. So that's the hope. And so far, I've not had any side effects, just a little tinge of nausea in the morning. But otherwise, day 2, all well. So yeah, another journey.
Mom was made aware of the side effects with this drug, but we allowed some room for hope. But here's how that journey went. Mom took the pills 3 times a day. She had weekly blood tests so they could monitor the effect of the drug. And gradually, the side effects came out in full force.
Nausea, like whenever I took it, complete loss of appetite, sleeplessness, total insomnia, eyes wide open kind of, disorientation, loss of balance. I was uncoordinated in my movements. My orientation, my balance wasn't good. I was bumping into doors. There was one incident when I was going to sleep and I sat on the bed. I completely missed the bed and fell off. My sense of estimation and things. When I was driving the car, I was like going over the curb when I was taking turns. And so it was getting to a very weird stage. I felt inside me I was losing my personality. Like I was losing who I usually am. Like I won't go so far as to say I was feeling like a zombie, but I wasn't me. I wasn't doing the things I normally do, like decision making or very indecisive. I'd become like totally, my brain was like as if it was mush. That was when I kind of sort of woke up to what's going on. Something is not right. Something is going on. It's affecting me badly.
I would talk to Mom on a video call daily and watch her sort of disappear. She was pale, the fierceness had gone, along with the optimism, and she was altogether less present somehow. Dad was growing increasingly anxious about what was happening here. And I was gripped, once again, by a familiar fear as I saw Mom get sicker with each passing day. Three weeks like this, until one day in early August.
The blood testing clinic called the department, the oncology department, and a doctor from there, an oncologist from there called me to say that the pathology lab has called up to say there's a red flag on your blood test. And we know you're coming for an appointment tomorrow, but can you tell us what you're experiencing? And I said, well, I'm feeling okay. And he says, but are you experiencing any nosebleeds? And I said, no. Do you have any spots on your body? And I couldn't see any at that time.
Mom's blood platelet count was alarmingly low. That was the reason for the red flag from the lab. Platelets stop us from bleeding. Stop taking the drug immediately, the oncologist on the phone told her. Watch out for bleeding from your nose and ears. Come in tomorrow for your regular appointment. And then the next morning,
I broke out into purpura, I think it's called, where it was like my blood spots all over my hand, my back, my tongue was completely black, like literally like the color of tar.
Mom headed straight to the hospital.
Where they immediately took me up to the 11th floor, which is the chemo center, and got me on a platelet infusion.
After the infusion, it was a clear decision about what should happen next.
We decided to stop on our own. We took the decision to stop it. We meaning me and my husband.
In 3 short weeks, a drug that was supposed to prolong her life had done what the cancer and the chemo did not: bring my mom to the very edge of survival.
I tried to get information about who else was taking it, what was the outcome, did other people experience what I am, and I couldn't get any information from that quarter. I tried calling up the Montreal people who were doing the coordination of the drug delivery, and I couldn't even get them on the line. They didn't even pick up the phone. That's when I began reading up reports and papers and case studies and research papers about the use of this drug. And I got to know that this was tried on BRCA1 and BRCA2, and it was very successful, a good percentage of success. But there was 1 or 2 places where I read that this was not specific to RAD51C or A or whichever the RAD mutant genes were, and that they still have to try it to see. It didn't work for me personally. That's the long and short of it. It's probably happily working for some people, and I hope it is, but it didn't do anything for me. So I decided that I would rather, if it recurs, and it did, I would rather go in for the chemo drug till as long as it works.
Anecdotally, we know that there are people out there who this drug is working for. It just didn't work for Mom. And like so much about this entire topic of ovarian cancer, the science, the drug, the impact, it was all difficult to parse, difficult to process. I wanted to understand more about this new class of drugs. That's coming up after the break. Hi, everyone. I wanted to say a big thank you for listening. We've been talking about ovarian cancer on this series precisely because, historically, nobody has. And I set out to change that, to get people talking more about ovarian cancer, to get women advocating for their health more strongly than we've done before, and to start a conversation about ovarian health more broadly. So I want to know, is it working? If this show has had an impact on you or someone you know, tell us about it. You can send us an email at overlookedpod23@gmail.com. That's overlookedpod23@gmail.com. And if you'd like to show your support for our independently produced show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or share the show to help us grow. See what I did there? Okay, back to the episode.
So in this room, this is where we actually grow the cancer cells and then work our way to kill the cancer cells as well.
I'm in a lab in Binghamton University in upstate New York, and I'm here to meet Dr. Tracy Brooks, an associate professor of pharmaceutical sciences.
So we do a lot of 3D modeling of the cancer cells as well, and we try and examine, is there a difference with how the chemo works in 2D versus 3D? What does the tumor kind of look like so we can test drugs?
Professor Brooks's grandmother had ovarian and pancreatic cancer. Her mother had endometrial cancer. Her husband, testicular cancer.
My reason for getting into cancer research in the first place has a lot of family history, like it does for most people who get into this area.
On a computer screen in her lab, Professor Brooks and I are watching a model of how cancer cells move and grow.
So you can see the cells are kind of like moving along little blobs, and that's what a 3D culture would look like. Mm-hmm. But these cells are actually really interesting. If you watch them over time, they actually find a place, they sit down, and they start expanding, and they'll start filling the space.
Oh my gosh.
And they, even if you zoomed in, which I can do in a second, they look like little neurons. They have little kind of growths outside of them.
Professor Brooks's work focuses on finding new ways to target and kill cancer cells by looking at 3 specific proteins.
One called MYC makes cells grow, one called BCL2 stops them from dying, so kind of opposite ends of the same spectrum. And then one called KRAS kind of is a middleman that tells cells to grow also. And in some way, shape, or form, one of these goes wrong in a bunch of different cancers.
I asked Professor Brooks if I could come see her lab and have her explain to me what she does, and also talk me through how this new class of targeted drugs works. They're called PARP inhibitors. And she began by starting at the beginning.
When our DNA replicates, normal process, even in taking a newly fertilized egg into a fully grown newborn, goes through, I don't know how many cycles of mitosis, the cell copying each other. I think it's around 50. But every time our cell copies itself, the DNA has to be copied. And we're not so good at doing that. So we make somewhere along the lines of 10% of errors every time we copy. And then little DNA repair proteins come along and fix it. And so in the end, we have like 300 wrong versions out of 3 million every time you copy. I'm very much estimating these numbers, but it's somewhere along that way. And part of that is why cancer is a disease of aging, right? Because it's 300 times every time you replicate, and they just build upon each other. So over time, you're going to hit a gene that will make it easier for cancer to develop. In the case of PARP, PARP is a DNA repair gene.
Our cells need these PARP proteins to repair our bodies so that they can keep growing and copying themselves. All of our cells, including cancer cells.
So when you block PARP, you can kind of let more DNA damage get through, which seems a bit counterintuitive.
But it's starting to make sense to me. Get rid of the repairmen, and the cancer cells don't get fixed either. So where chemo is a weapon of mass destruction, this is more like preventing reconstruction. This new class of PARP inhibitors are targeted, specific, and many factors about the individual patient need to be taken into account before figuring out if the drug could be helpful.
We've got all of these smaller targeted drugs that only work in their small little pockets. If you have a clinician who's at an academic center, they are usually very knowledgeable. They are learning about these things all the time. And it's not to say that clinicians not at academic centers do not learn about this constantly, but it is not coming at them at the same rate, to my knowledge. So I think you've got a spectrum of patients. You've got some who just want to trust their doctor. They don't want to think about it. That's just, okay, you tell me what I need to do and I will do it. And so it's a little bit scary when you hear about all these variations and they don't want to know. Or you have patients that do want to know, but it can be really hard to do the deep digging, especially if you're not a scientist. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't know any biology, it gets really difficult to parse these things out.
But in my understanding, this newer class of drugs, these more targeted drugs, they've been described from what I've seen as like fresh hope. But this is obviously fresh hope with some caveats, right?
They all are. No medication, no drug is without side effects. Even vitamin C that people can take in high quantities. I had a student challenge me once when I said this in class, there's no drug without side effects. Vitamin C, it's like, actually, if you take a lot, you will have osmotic diarrhea. So I'm pretty sure you don't want that either. Everything has an adverse effect. And it's a matter of how much will you tolerate. It's a cost-benefit analysis. We want to extend quality and quantity of life. We want to do it in the safest way possible. Here's this new class of drug that should help. Let's see how it works. And it's hard to know when you're looking at a patient, are you going to experience the really toxic stuff or are you going to be on the other end of the spectrum? They don't know until they try.
New drugs, new science, it's all a judgment call. Mom's doctors didn't know until they gave it a try, and Mom herself weighed up the risks and decided to give it a try. High stakes, trial and error. I want to say this again. Maybe this drug does work for some folks. The only way to know is close consultation with your medical team and close monitoring. But for Mom, this journey and the hope of a maintenance drug and no more chemo had come to an end. She had survived it by the skin of her teeth and somehow made it to the fall of 2020.
September 13, and it's the ovarian cancer walk of hope today. So doing the walk. Not too much. I could do it, but my husband, Robin, is with me and he cannot walk that much. But it's just the two of us. I didn't have a big team this year. Whew. So we are walking a little bit, like maybe a kilometer, nothing more than that. But it's nice. It's a lovely sunny day. And I have actually enough energy to walk more. I've just had a very bad month, but it's been good after that, after I stopped the niraparib. So yeah, that's what the Walk of Hope is about. It's for everybody who's walking wherever in the world, and to hope that someday together with research and with God's help, we can beat this disease, at least enough to have early diagnosis or a proper diagnosis or equipment to make sure that there's a proper diagnosis. So yeah, it's a lovely Sunday morning. There's a good breeze around, and I'm walking on Dunbrack in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
Overlooked is written and produced by me, Golda Arthur. Our associate producer is Jessica Martinez-Dios. Lissa Soep is our editor, and Eric Gomez is our sound designer and engineer. Please share this episode with someone who would like to listen as well. And leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We're a small show, and every little bit helps. And for more information about the show, check out our website, www.overlookedpod.com. Thank you for listening.